Perfect, Dan.
All right, so welcome everyone. Happy Friday. Hope everyone's doing great. Thanks for joining our Tech Talk. Today we have Linn here with us to talk about imposter syndrome. So thank you for being here and take it away.
All right. Hey everybody, I'm Linn and I am an imposter. I've actually been professionally impostoring for over 20 years and I now lead a team of 10 other imposters at Hello World in Portland, Oregon. One way my personal imposter syndrome manifests itself is through talking fast. I'll try to slow down, but I probably won't, but don't worry, because that means we'll have plenty of time for questions. A little bit about me. I'm a self-taught dev with over 20 years of experience in all sorts of tech stacks. I also started and ran the Mentorship Saturdays program for 5 years in Portland, which is specifically designed to help people get into or level up in the industry. You should check it out if you're interested. With this much longevity in tech, you can expect some of my jokes to be deprecated. You can ignore those. In this talk, I'll be focusing on taking action to overcome bouts of imposter syndrome. This won't necessarily cure you. I still struggle with it at times, but hopefully you'll leave with some tools to overcome it when you do encounter it. You will find some of these tools will be super cheesy to you. I sure find some of these to be, but some may actually help you. So I still feel like an imposter even today. When I wrote a business plan for my company a couple of years ago, that for some required paperwork, I literally just followed an internet tutorial, and I know that I have a great plan for my business, but I had no idea if it was a great business plan, right? So I had some interesting thoughts as I prepared to submit this talk for the first time. Whoops, I lost my screen here. Am I really qualified to speak on this? I'll have peers in the audience, and what if they know my journey and that I'm not a classically trained CS major or a psychologist? What if they think I'm an imposter developer and therefore my take on imposter syndrome is lousy? This wasn't just stage fright. I can be a clown by nature, so being on stage isn't that tough for me, but imposter syndrome can pop up for anyone at any time. It does take some confidence to give talks and things like that, and I can't say that I haven't or don't still suffer from imposter syndrome. And to illustrate this point, I'll be taking some breaks from the main presentation to tell some stories about my own and others' episodes. I call this disaster piece theater. So the first story, I was pretty excited to learn that I'd been accepted to talk at DevZiner 2014. I worked really hard on my presentation and I was over the moon when the day came to do it. But when I stepped up to the podium, it took me 5 minutes and some audience participation to get the two screens working right. I knew in my heart and soul right then and there that everybody in that room knew what a fraud I was. How can this guy be presenting when he can't even work the projector? In reality, I was able to present on a topic that didn't have many experts, and I was presenting something that I had created myself. So why on earth was I doubting myself? And everyone knows that most devs can't work projectors or printers anyway. I'll also be getting a little help from Dr. Seuss as we go along. This book was written to inspire confidence in children, but I happened to pick it up and read it to my daughter the night I heard that the Portland Code School had abruptly closed. The fact that it had closed was very sad, but it was just an obstacle to be overcome. Things happen, servers crash, databases get corrupted. As Dr. Seuss gave his advice to my daughter, I realized that it was a great allegory for learning how to code. So it might be a little cheesy, but we'll be reading it as we go along. And I've made some slight changes for our purposes today. Congratulations, today is your day. You're off to great places, you're coding away. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, you can steer yourself any direction you choose. You're on your own, and you know what you know, and you are the person who will decide where to go. You look up and down tech stacks, look them over with care. About some you will say, I do not choose to go there. With your head full of brains and your shoes full of feet, you're too smart to use anything that isn't quite elite. And you may not find any you'll want to use. In that case, of course, open source you will choose. It's opener there in the wide open air. Out there, things can happen and frequently do to people as brainy and footsy as you. And then things start to happen. Don't worry, don't stew. Just go right along. You'll start happening too. Oh, the places you'll code. The acceptance email I got for a conference I spoke at last summer went something like this. We accepted your talk, even though you misspelled imposter in your title. Holy cow. How embarrassing. I had just submitted a talk in which I have misspelled the most crucial word in the entire presentation. So my first thought naturally was, well, here's another story for my talk. And as it turns out, you can actually spell it with an E or an O, and the jury's still out on which is preferred, so I like to flip freely between them for fun. So the Caltech Counseling Center has this definition on their site, and it can basically be summed up as feeling inadequate, although you haven't, or even though you have performed in that area before. So I'll give you a second to read it. Generally, I see people nodding along when I read this, but I can't see anybody's faces or hear any groans at my jokes or applause or anything. It's very strange. What does it happen, or who does it happen to? There seems to be an obligatory part of any writings on imposter syndrome where I tell you who suffers from it. I found this is a very common theme amongst writers on this topic. There are many examples of high-functioning people who have claimed imposter syndrome, but I'm only going to quote this one for now. The exaggerated esteem in which my life work is held makes me very ill at ease. I feel compelled to think of myself as an involuntary swindler. This is Albert freaking Einstein. Research suggests that 2 out of 5 successful people feel like they are a fraud. And I bet dimes dollars that it's much higher in development. I do want to note that this phenomenon was first identified in women entering the workplace last century. Most speculate that doubt of women's qualifications was internalized by the women themselves, and while outwardly confident, the women entering the workplace suffered internally. I can definitely notice women I've worked with having these feelings at the same time as I've noticed them with men, at least in my immediate experience being in technology. Through our equity and diversity program, we found that minorities may experience it differently too. This talk will focus on imposter syndrome from my perspective as a white male developer. So while these tools have helped both me and the male and women developers from all backgrounds that I've worked with, and I hope that they can help you too, I don't claim to be able to accurately speak to the full breadth of another person's perspective on this. The pandemic has also brought out or worsened this in some folks. And in some instances, it's allowed people to overcome their fears and take on new endeavors. The Great Resignation, for example. The threat of furloughs and the possibility of not being able to find the job have intensified these feelings for some people, but for some, it's actually created more opportunity. Before we go too far into the pep talk, it's also important to note that imposter syndrome is a sign of intelligence and not ignorance. It serves a valuable purpose in asking the base question, should I even be doing this? People who lack imposter syndrome will continually run headlong into walls, not understanding why somebody put a wall there. This is a scene from the movie The Other Guys, movie Will Ferrell and Marky Mark, in which the hero cops of the city are chasing bad guys across the roof. The bad guys then clip onto a zip line and zip down 6 stories to the ground. The hero cops, lacking any semblance of imposter syndrome, look at each other and one says, "You think of what I'm thinking?" And the other one says, "Yep, aim for the bushes." So, spoiler alert. They jump and the camera follows them all the way down to the concrete. Needless to say, they didn't make it. So even though I'm going to be talking about how to overcome it, it's definitely important to be aware of when you're about to jump off a building. And imposter syndrome is incredibly situational. Here's an unattributed quote I found. Though traditionally perceived as an ingrained personality trait, imposter syndrome has more recently been studied as a reaction to certain situations. One of these situations is working in development. So it's less about you being a black knight with a flesh wound and more about you being in the Monty Python movie. In fact, open source world in particular, where your work is peer reviewed by other talented developers, is a notorious breeding ground for imposter syndrome. To everyone in this room, you didn't take an easy route, where your mastery of a trade that hasn't changed in decades is easily measured and observed. You chose a career in which we're asked to do things we've never done before, over and over. And naturally, this can lead to feelings of inadequacy. Do you like how I zipped through the only code in this presentation too quickly for you to actually evaluate? It doesn't help that the industry puts some pretty unrealistic titles and requirements out there like ninjas, rock stars, and sorceresses. Anyone heard anything like this? Looking for a Perl Warlock with 10 plus years in Ruby, Linux kernel contributions, and experience doing isometric transformations in Canvas. COBOL Experience Plus. Luckily, these days, developers being so in demand, it's more like, have you heard of JavaScript and do you know what a function is, at least for some folks. So in the early years, even the crappiest of us, which was me, were considered wizards because we could do what others couldn't, plain and simple. But now people think of it as much more of a commodity position, but still expect us to have the proficiency and skill of a ninja. So somewhere along the lines, people stopped admiring rock stars and started expecting them. Although I am a yellow belt in 2 different martial arts, that's one above I just started, I have played in a cover band, and I still dabble in some sleight of hand coin magic. This does not make me a ninja, a rock star, or a sorcerer. Trying to live up to any of those standards are tough, to say the least. You'll be on your way up. You'll be making great sites. You'll join the high flyers who code to high heights. You won't lag behind because you'll have the speed. You'll pass the whole gang and you'll soon take the lead. Wherever you code, you'll be the best of the best. Wherever you code, you will top all the rest. Except when you don't, because sometimes you won't. Not everyone learns at the same speed. As you can see from these curves that I obviously drew by hand, I think that my learning curve is like this. I can learn the basics of something very quickly, but it's actually rare that I gain complete mastery over it. I've worked with others who seem like they aren't understanding anything until some magical moment when all of a sudden their knowledge and confidence skyrocket and eventually they do achieve mastery. It's important that we identify these curves within ourselves and others and accommodate them. A good friend and old coworker of mine who also happened to give talks on these same subjects also didn't make it to me, excuse me, let me back up a little bit, slow down. Almost didn't make it when he started at the company I used to work for. Although we recognized his talent and knew he'd have some ramp up time with Drupal, the framework we just mentioned, he struggled. He was the slow build skyrocket type. On his side, he was completely terrified and almost gave notice on multiple occasions because he was sure he was swindling us. Then one day in week 5, he hit his stride and started killing it. He surpassed my back-end Drupal knowledge that month and is now very high up in Autodesk. We don't do cookie cutter work either. We're in the business of solving problems. It's actually rare that the problems we solve are duplicates of previous problems. In fact, even when the problems are duplicates, technology may have changed in the meantime, requiring a new solution anyway. I don't know about you, but I can't point to 2 sites or applications I've ever worked on in my experience that were done the exact same way because things simply move too quickly. These are some ways and situations that can trigger imposter syndrome, and recognizing what it is that triggers you and what makes you feel imposter syndrome will help you combat it. Every project is a delicate, unique little snowflake that requires its own personal touches and flourishes. This can be fun, but it can also be very nerve-wracking. If we could simply pump out the same snowflakes over and over, somebody would build a website machine, maybe like Squarespace or something, and be done with it. I thought at one point that grid.io, the site that will dynamically create a site and layouts for you based on your content, I don't even know if it still exists, would put me out of a job. But don't worry, I've actually had this thought many, many times in my career. In fact, way back in 1998, I was pretty sure that Adobe Dreamweaver was going to let my son make sites like Legos. But the reality is that as soon as somebody can identify something like a Squarespace site or a grid.io site, people and companies will want to be different. The pitch will literally be, I don't want it to look like a grid.io site. So we're constantly creating new things, and that can wear on us. It may cause you to have thoughts like, why am I struggling? I've done this a million times. Or why am I not faster or better at this by now? But the truth is that we are delicate, unique snowflake constructors, and they aren't the same. Estimating is hard. There's a reason it's not called exactimating. And in the software space, estimates can swing wildly. I've worked with developers on how to get better at estimating, but we don't have a magic potion that we can just drink and be master estimators. It's all feel and experience and breaking things down into smaller and smaller chunks. While I happen to fancy myself pretty good at logic problems like this, I don't know if people even still do these, I can't tell how long it's going to I can't tell you how long it's going to take for me to solve it because I'm not aware of all the variables until I start going through the logic. There could be a small dragon in a tiny estimate that completely blows the estimate out of the water. And there's nothing like spending 40 hours on a 4-hour estimate, but it can and will happen. And when it does, in comes imposter syndrome. So you've completed that task. Awesome. Did you do it right? Did you follow standards? Did you follow the right standards? Can it be updated without breaking? Is it in source control properly? Can it be deployed worry-free? There are multiple problems with this particular issue. For one, what is the bar and who is the authority? It's likely up to whoever your supervisor is, but is that it? Do your clients have code quality options or code quality opinions, excuse me? What about other developers on the project? As developers, we're held to incredibly high standards that are constantly changing, and that can lead to imposter syndrome. Stephen Hawking recently redefined his theory of black holes and said that matter can escape, albeit to another dimension. So if Stephen Hawking can be wrong, maybe you can be wrong too. My first legitimate digital job was working as a production designer for a tiny agency that did a lot of color correction for a screensaver company. 95% of my job was to Photoshop these photos so that A, any color casts were removed while maintaining the feel of the picture, B, they were sharpened in a way that you couldn't tell that they had been sharpened, and C, that they had true white and black points set. My boss was a professional photographer before he was a graphic designer and was notoriously picky. So here's an exercise. I want you to go ahead and think about this. I've color corrected one of these slides, and I'd just like you to vote in your head. So some people are going to think that it's the image on the left. Some people are going to think that it's the image on the right. I've actually had even splits on this when I see it in person. So maybe you'll guess right, but I don't even remember which one is which. My point is that it was completely subjective work that left me feeling like an imposter every single day. Unlike programming, where it works well or it doesn't, this was completely up to the whims of my boss or the observer. Sometimes I would get a little overzealous and over sharpen or whatever, but 90% of what he would correct was completely subjective. I don't live in this world anymore, and neither do you. So your work may be subjective to a point, but in the end, if it works and has a decent design, UX, and architecture, it should be successful. Pardon me. This one is near and dear to me as I've recently transitioned from development to management over the last few years. I left a position where I had amassed a great deal of knowledge and respect and traded it for a brand new career in which I had very little experience. Pardon me, I need to grab a quick glass of water.
In the meantime, if you guys want to share your LinkedIn's in here, feel free to do that. It's a great way to network with each other. Also, yeah.
Hopefully it's not that conference COVID we were talking about, huh?
Nah.
Let's hope not.
Hopefully not.
Much better. All right, so I had just gotten this new job, and all of a sudden, I was brand new again. I kept calling myself a junior director, hoping people would cut me some slack. I struggled mightily in my new role, even though I was providing the leadership and mentorship that was required of me. It wasn't until I looked back and realized that it was me and my set of skills that had gotten me promoted, and I just needed to be me and not try to live up to whatever imaginary Dan Linn director of development that I had in my head. Oh, I hope I got it there. Now I'm going to go over some ways in which to deal with imposter syndrome. A number of these came from a wonderful article written by Kyle Eschenbroder entitled 21 Proven Ways to Overcome Imposter Syndrome. I've omitted some, expanded on others, and added my own. And I'm not sure exactly how he actually proved any of these, but it's definitely worth a read. So the number one best way I found to overcome imposter syndrome is to simply say, this is imposter syndrome. Heck, if you can get yourself to say out loud, I think this might be imposter syndrome, chances are that you'll feel better immediately. So another group activity, although we're not going to hear each other maybe, let's all say, I think I have imposter syndrome together on three, not 1, 2, and then say it, but 1, 2, 3, and then say it. This is me project managing. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I think I have imposter syndrome. Boy, I sure hope at least one person did that. Talk to somebody you trust. Hopefully this person is someone who will not just tell you what you want to hear, but hopefully they'll tell you the truth. And that truth will likely be that you're being too hard on yourself. If no one is around and saying it doesn't help, just start talking to yourself. I know this sounds silly, but there's an actual technique to use when you're stuck as a developer called rubber ducking. The basic idea is that sometimes you just need to talk it out. So developers will sometimes keep a rubber ducky or other such totem to simply talk out. I have a little clown on my desk that sometimes I talk to. I used to have a client who would call me up and he was very long-winded. He'd go on for 5 minutes about the problem he was having, and 9 times out of 10, he'd end up saying something like, oh, well, I guess all I have to do is this, and then we'd be done. I started not answering his calls and sending him straight to voicemail where he would just solve all his own problems, and I don't think I ever talked to him again. We're definitely not perfect, and despite job descriptions to the contrary, we don't and can't know everything. Maybe at one point you could, but no longer. I've accepted that my lack of a formal CS degree hinders my ability to work on low-level architecture. Although I've written a Java app before, I barely knew what I was doing and would be in deep trouble if I had to actually manage more than one memory thread. But that's fine. I simply look for help in these areas or plainly state that may not be the best for the job, but I'll give it a whirl anyway if needed. Some of you may be thinking through this talk, holy cow, these are dated references. Well, two things about that. I'm old in the dev world and I don't code as much anymore, and what comes around goes around. I've been in development long enough to remember when JavaScript was the new cool hotness, then fell out of favor as a script kiddie language, then became the new cool hotness again. So just try to get as much value out of the stories as you can and not focus as the tech as much. That's more of my imposter syndrome coming out. I have a condition that my friends have coined, which is very similar to bitchy resting face, if you've ever heard that. It's called asshole listening face. When someone is describing a problem to me, I make a face similar to this gentleman. And in my head, I'm thinking, wow, that's a really hard problem. I wonder how I can help with that. But apparently it comes off more like, why is this person talking to me and when are they going to stop? So once I identified it, I tried to combat it, but it's just something that I'm constantly working on. When I told my wife about this, she knew all about it. So sure, I suck at memory management, and machine code is as foreign to me as it is to my dog, but I've also been a leader in some other areas. I was doing cool stuff with Scriptaculous way before jQuery was around. I remember tables and layers, and I have even used the Zoom CSS property on purpose, not just to trick Internet Explorer into working. I have skills in many intangible areas that make me a very valuable developer. So when I'm faced with a problem that has me temporarily stumped, I try not to beat myself up too much. I'm sorry to say, but sadly it's true that crashes and hackers can happen to you. You can get all hung up in a prickly perch and your gang will fly on, you'll be left in a lurch. You'll come down from the lurch with an unpleasant dump, and the chances are then that you'll be in a slump. And when you're in a slump, you're not in for much fun, for unslumping yourself is not easily done. I'm a full stack developer, but I tend to lean towards the front end. A few years back, I thought it'd be a great idea to get a virtual private server on GoDaddy and start hosting my own sites for clients. I could configure Apache, I knew how to set up virtual hosts, so how hard could it be? Fast forward through 6 months of the server just making money for me, and then it just stopped sending email for all my clients. I had been blacklisted from the email servers. I had been hacked. I was thrown into a complete panic. I went through and checked the processes, killing anything I couldn't verify. I learned everything I could about IP tables and firewalls. Finally, I even offered to pay a friend of mine with some experience to come over and take a look at it with me. Luckily, he only charged me a 6-pack. While I was sitting there beating myself up for thinking that I could possibly do something like this, he was actually admiring the sophistication of the attack, in which they had hacked a mail server into my SSH client so that every time they were in there, it just looked like a legitimate SSH login. I'd been sitting there thinking that I had no business hosting sites, which is still very debatable, but in reality, I'd just been out-hustled by somebody who makes hacking into servers their job. I can't beat myself up for that. Once I came to that conclusion and moved everybody over to managed servers, I was able to move on. We are all different. Same skills that make me a good developer may not be the same set of skills that make you one. If I was constantly comparing myself to somebody with a CS degree, I'd probably go crazy. Not only did they sit through 4 years of in-depth computer science training that I didn't receive, but they actually have a piece of paper that says they can do it, which is a nice segue to my next point for this crowd. I don't mean to offend anybody with this, and obviously I'm biased not having a degree myself. My wife does have a doctorate though. Having a degree does not automatically make someone a better developer. Knowledge of CS is very important, but it's not the knowledge we most often leverage. It's our creativity and ingenuity that make us good developers. And again, this isn't cookie cutter work. Degree or not, you chose this career because it's interesting to you and you likely had some innate skill at figuring stuff out and problem solving. Don't think that just because you're self-taught, you aren't good. And your employers chose you too. Did you lie on your resume or in your interview? Unless you did, your employer hired you for a reason, probably lots of them. I can tell you that it's pretty frustrating as a manager when I have more faith in an employee than they do in themselves. So don't discount other people's opinions of you. They may be tinted with their own lenses, but there's truth to it, and you have to see that. A friend I used to work with had no digital PM experience, but was told to apply by a friend who worked there because they knew he had the skills. We saw great things in him, hired him, but when he got the job, he had a huge case of the imposties. He tried to focus on his experience of running a venue to try to validate himself rather than just being open and honest about being new to it. When he realized that he had the validation of his team and that he had been hired based on potential, he was able to refocus on learning the new job and is now extremely successful and a co-owner of an agency. So we are superheroes as developers. We swoop in and save the day very often, but we do that with creativity and not laser beams. If your coworkers or manager, or maybe just yourself, feel like you should be capable of more, maybe it's time to talk it out and reset expectations. If you're the one expecting too much of yourself, then maybe you need to have a little sit down with yourself and try some of these techniques. All right. We're going to watch this really cool trailer here. This could be so worth it, trust me. All right. This is a trailer that really resonates with me. In this trailer, you see everyday people faced with extraordinary circumstances where it's easy to just give up. Be determined. Be courageous. Be free. Be the Batman. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's go back to the presentation. In this trailer, you see people overcome situations where they could easily give up. Instead, they become the Batman and overcome those obstacles. Here's why I think Batman resonates with people. He has no superpowers. He is just a human. Granted, he is super rich, insanely focused, and a martial arts expert and weapons inventor, but still, his greatest asset is his mind. We all have the capability to dig within us and find our inner Batman. Over the years, I've actually learned how to take the stress from stressful situations and sublimate it into a frenetic energy that kind of fuels me. It took a while to do, but it's kind of the realization of the adage, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. So be the Batman. All right, apologies to LeBron fans because I'm a diehard Blazer fan, so I love this picture. But Babe Ruth struck out plenty of times. LeBron is regarded as probably the best player in the universe, but he still loses championships. Missing shots and even losing are a part of any game, and in reality, part of life. We would be nervous wrecks if we were expected to do the exact right thing at the right time, every time. So stop beating yourself up over every little mistake. You will come to a place where the docks are not marked. Some words are highlighted, but mostly they're dark. A place you could sprain both your elbow and chin. Do you dare to stay out? Do you dare to go in? How much can you lose? How much can you win? And if you dive in, should you turn left or right? Or right in 3/4, or maybe not quite? Or go around the back end and sneak in from behind? Simple it's not, I'm afraid you will find, for a mind maker upper to make up their mind. So I recently helped OMSI with a site rebuild. Not having the full necessary budget for the project, they asked me to just architect the site and guide their devs through the development of the site. As I had recently vacated my development position for management, this was kind of right up my alley. So I led them through 14 weeks of agile development, and then 2 weeks before the expected go live date and issue with their calendar, the main feature of the new site came up as a showstopper. It turns out that using Drupal views to query a date range on a multi-value field collection was a little tricky. So I tried a new method, and then the pager stopped working correctly. Tried another one and had different problems. The problem was so weird that I actually hired a friend of mine to take a look. In the meantime, I had to go to my client and explain while everything had gone swimmingly up until then, we had finally hit a roadblock with major implications and that their timeline was no longer valid. Talk about imposter syndrome. I'd been hired to do something and was now enlisting others to do that very thing. Luckily, I've had 15 years worth of imposter syndrome experience, and using many of the tools here subconsciously, the feelings are pretty fleeting for me. For what it's worth, the calendar was fixed and is live now, and it was one sort by clause that I was missing. Sort by was the answer. Don't have regrets when you're on your deathbed. Will you say to yourself, boy, I'm sure glad that I gave up on X. I'm not sure I could have handled the success. Probably not. So dive in and take risks, be adventurous and courageous. And this is my friend Slavko, who just got certified to jump on his own, which is actually probably not the best example for me because there's no way I'd jump out of a plane. You can get so confused that you'll start in a race down long rabbit holes at breaknecking pace and grind on for miles across the weird hyperspace, headed I fear towards a most useless place, the waiting place. For people just waiting for a train to go, or a bus to come, or a plane to go, or a program to compile, or a new version to show, or the phone to ring, or the snow to snow, or the waiting around for a yes or no, or waiting for their hair to grow. Everyone is just waiting for the client to bite, or waiting for the wind to fly a kite, or waiting around to deploy at night, or waiting perhaps for the rich Uncle Jake, or some angel funding, or a better break, or a string of pearl, or a pair of ampersands, or a bracket with curls, or another chance. Everyone is just waiting. So what's the best way to dive in? Literally just do it. Take action. I wish I could get back some of the time I spent standing at the top of the half pipe with one foot on the board, just too chicken to put the other one on and take the plunge. I finally did it, and you know what? What it took? Absolutely nothing, just doing it. It took me taking action and dropping in. So stop overthinking it and do something. The very act of doing something is contrary to feeling like an imposter. No, that's not for you. Somehow you'll escape all that waiting and staying. You'll find the Get repos where Google is playing. With banner flip-flapping, once more you'll ride far, ready for anything under stars. Ready because that's the kind of person you are. So I identify with this one a lot because it's truth. I've been completely over my head hundreds of times. If I go back to my dropping in analogy, if I would have simply tried it, I likely would have succeeded on my very first try. But I had never done it. Even though I had the basic idea of what I needed to do, I was too chicken to simply do it. All I needed to do was try. So the most widely recognized way to truly overcome a bout with imposter syndrome is to write. This isn't my thing, but it works for a lot of people. Write what you're feeling. If you can't do that, you're supposed to just write gibberish, letting negative thoughts flow out of the pen onto the paper. Just this simple exercise can have a profound effect on your mental state. But even more importantly than writing when you're feeling down is recording your successes. And this I encourage with my employees all the time. When you start to get down on yourself, you can then go back to your journal of successes. And after a while, I think you'll be amazed at what you've accomplished. I started seeing a new doctor once, and the first appointment was very revealing as she sat me down and had me tell her about every injury and sickness that I'd ever had. As I was recounting my stories, it started to become clear that I've had a lot of head injuries, like double digits. Although I suffer from weird head and neck pains occasionally, it never occurred to me that I'd had so many. All it took for that realization was for me to go back through my past and remember. Had I kept a journal of successful injuries, I would have already been aware. Oh, the places you'll code. There is fun to be had. There are tests to be run against the newest JS fad. And the magical things you can do with that code will make you the winningest winner you know. Fame. You'll be as famous can be, with the whole wide world watching you win on TV. Live coding is a sport. It'll come one day, I'm sure. Except when they don't, because sometimes they won't. I'm afraid that sometimes you'll play lonely games too. Games you can't win because you'll play against you. All alone, whether you like it or not. Alone will be something you'll be quite a lot. And when you're alone, there's a very good chance you'll meet things that scare you right out of your pants. There are some down the road between hither and yon that can scare you so much you may not want to go on. So now I'd like to introduce something that may resonate with some in the crowd more than a rubber duck or writing in a journal. This is the concept of test-driven personal development. A lot of us developers are great at logic, but maybe not so much at sorting out what we're feeling. So in an effort to break down the problem into something we can understand better, I came up with the idea of test-driven personal development. As we go through this, you may notice that it's just a complete gimmick, but our mind is playing tricks on us, so it's only fair to do the same thing to it. So the basic steps are just what you'd expect from any test-driven philosophy. You identify the problem, you run a test if you already have it, otherwise you write it and run it. So we'll take a look at this flow chart here. It starts with a problem that I've written a test for. The test reads, as a developer tasked with updating a color, I want to clear the caches so that I can review my changes. What this really means through the imposter lens is, oh my God, all I had to do was update a color. Now the site is broken, white screen of death. What the hell is a segmentation fault? I'm going to be fired. So we run the test, and of course it fails, but maybe we get an error message. So we Google that. We use our Google foo. We test keywords and error messages. Maybe we adjust our results and try searching again. We keep doing this until we have no results for at least 3 times. Let's say you don't find anything after 4 times, reading my logic here. Then it's time to look for new ideas. Some things try if you ever find yourself in this spot, which again should be very, very rare. Maybe you're barking up the wrong tree. Maybe reevaluate what has been done or what needs to be done. Maybe your test just needs a rewrite. Maybe it's time to ask your question on Stack Overflow. Maybe it's time to go to a meetup or find a mentor, or maybe even pay another professional to help out. The 2 incidents I mentioned were the only 2 times I had to pay another person to come in and fix up my mess. So hopefully that's rare for you. The much more likely scenario is that you do get results. Maybe you don't find the silver bullet like, yes, exclamation point, but maybe it's more like, yes, question mark. Either way, rejoice, for you're not alone. You got results. Does that mean that you can actually fix it now? Do we know if it actually can be fixed? If not, you may need to find a new solution, or maybe it's just out of your wheelhouse and it's time to go back to our other resources. But maybe, just maybe, you're now able to fix it. So you fix it, you make sure to keep your test in your journal of successes and notes for next time. This process takes the emotions out of it while allowing us to simply take action one step to the next while keeping moving. After a few iterations of this, you should start to internalize it and have an internal framework for dealing with difficult imposter syndrome situations. At the end of the day, there's nothing novel about this flowchart. It's just a way to force you to take action and record your successes. You could literally put, as a homeowner, I need to mow my lawn so that my neighbor stops complaining. And this process would help you get that done. And eventually, you wouldn't even need the flowchart anymore, and you could mow your lawn with confidence. But on you will go, though the weather be foul. On you will go, though your enemies prowl. On you will go, though the hacking cracks howl. On upward of many a frightening creek, though your arms may get sore and you still support IE. On and on you will hike, and I know you'll hike far and face up to your problems, whatever they are. You'll get mixed up, of course, as you already know. You'll get mixed up with many strange libraries as you go. So be sure when you step with care and great tact, and remember that life's a great balancing act. Just never forget to be dexterous and deft, and never mix up your right floats with your left. Just a few recap points to make. You don't suck. This is actually a part of your profession, and we all get it. You picked a profession where we're going to be learning the rest of your career. So just get used to this feeling, because it's going to happen all the time. Identify when it happens to you and how to see it coming. Keep a journal of successes to remind you where you've been and what you've done. And finally, the show must go on, so keep on trucking. And will you succeed? Yes, you will indeed. 98.75% guaranteed. Kid, you'll move mountains. So, be your name Buxbaum or Bixby or Bray or Mordecai Ali Ben Allen O'Shea, you're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting. So get on your way. So that is the end of my presentation, and now I'll happily take any questions. One thing that actually happens here, though, I will note, is that people tend to start getting imposter syndrome when I ask for questions and don't want to actually ask their questions. And then when I would walk away from the podium, I'd get this line of people sheepishly coming up to me asking questions. But it'd be great if you could ask your questions here for the benefit of everybody.
I'll open up the microphones now so people can ask verbal questions if they want. You are welcome to ask questions in the chat as well.
Cool. I'm going to start at the top, and I will look for questions coming down.
Don't remember if there were any questions. I guess William would like to see your code. The one you just sped through.
Yeah, oh, you want to see the code I sped through? Sure, yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind sharing that. Let's see. You're welcome to use this presentation. I actually don't have the places you'll code separate from this presentation. First time I've actually been asked for that, but you're welcome to use it. Yes, I'd be happy to connect, William. I will connect with everybody.
We are
Java is a low
recording
level.
this. Yes.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. I was just gonna say we are recording this, and we're gonna post it on YouTube, so you can definitely like go ahead and pause, take a look at that code. But yeah.
Cool. Java isn't low level. You may be right. Compared to HTML and JavaScript and CSS, I'd consider it low level. Let's see. It is from all places you'll go.
Looks like Kevin's got a question. Go for it.
Yeah, go for it, Kevin.
Hey, I just actually accepted a job offer yesterday.
Congratulations.
It's my first job. It's a full stack position. And I don't have a lot of full stack experience, so obviously I'm kind of feeling nervous going in. And kind of one thing that's really thrown me off is that their initial salary offer was kind of lower. I countered, and then they actually raised me 15% from what I asked for. So like, I'm afraid that they're kind of overvaluing me. So I kind of am stuck in this like imposter syndrome of feeling like maybe I kind of oversold myself in a sense. So I don't know if you kind of have any suggestions or kind of how I can kind of fight this feeling of kind of overselling myself.
I mean, you did renegotiate, right? So you did say that I'm better than that salary that you meant. Do you know the stacks that you're going to be working in?
Yeah, it's mostly web-based, JavaScript, React, Postgres, Node, which I kind of all have experience in a little bit, but I am kind of fairly new to it as well.
Okay. I mean, I won't lie and say you haven't created a little bit of a situation for yourself here to get over, but I think the fact that you have experience in all the stacks you're going to be working in, if I had any advice for you, would be to lean into the processes that they have in place and try to understand their processes right away and understand how and when you should be asking for help. Sometimes that can be tricky.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Any other questions? I can also leave, Dan, is your LinkedIn a great place to connect with you? If someone
Absolutely.
Okay. I actually, there we go. It's in the chat box. You guys feel free to connect. I know sometimes I actually forget my questions and then I remember them. So it's also a good way to get in touch with Dan. And then also, like I mentioned, we are recording this talk and we're going to post it on our YouTube channel. You can watch this and our previous tech talks. We just shared a link in the chat box. It looks like Travis has a question. Adding to Kevin's question, if you experience imposter syndrome during an interview, what is a quick way to snap you out of it?
One of my favorite pieces of advice for people going into interviews is be confident in what you know and be confident in what you don't know, because you can't know everything, especially starting out, right? So don't try to BS people. They're going to see through that, right? Don't try to give half answers, right? The answer of, oh, I've heard of that, but I've never had a chance to use it is perfectly acceptable, right? Asking people to rephrase a question if you don't understand it is also perfectly acceptable and kind of gives you a minute to kind of think about. Another thing I will do is I won't hesitate to, I kind of did that in this presentation. Started getting a frog in my throat. That was a physical thing. but I said, sorry, let me just grab a quick glass of water really quick. Grab a glass of water. That gave my body time to reset. But sometimes I'll do that for my head too, right? I'll say, if I'm in a really difficult meeting, Zoom has made this really nice where you can say, oh shoot, I'm sorry, excuse me for one moment. Turn my stuff off, take a second, jump back in, right? Let me think if I have any other immediate advice for overcoming imposter syndrome in an interview. Don't worry about feeling nervous. Everybody knows you're nervous. It's an interview. So that's going to be a very natural feeling. I wouldn't try to fight that too much, if that makes sense.
Great, that was a really good question. All right, anything else? Anyone have more questions?
And one thing to add to that, Dan, I find that doing practice interviews, mock interviews, that kind of thing, is really helpful for when you get in the interview. So especially if you can do it with someone else, a friend or a family member, that kind of thing. Just sit down, try to go through any questions you may think that are going to be asked, and just practice it. And it does give you more confidence when you go in.
Definitely.
This makes perfect. Okay. Also, just to let you guys know, next week we have another tech talk coming up. It's going to be on importance of side projects and networking with Lindsay Wardell. So go ahead and check that out. I'm going to put a link in the chat box. If you're interested, you can definitely RSVP. If there are no other questions, then this is pretty much the end of the talk. Thank you so much, Dan, for joining us. It was a great presentation as always.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And thanks for everyone else joining, and I'll see you guys next week.
Thanks all.
Yeah.
Have a good weekend.
That was great, Dan. Thank you. And
Thank you.
really entertaining and really informative. So appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you, Dan. Bye.